Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and happy holidays. Welcome to our roundtable discussion today, How to Thrive in 2024 with GenAI, Learning, Talent Retention, and more. I'm Claude Werder of Brandon Hall Group, and I'm joined by our CEO, Mike Cook, and Chief Strategy Officer, Michael Rochelle. Like me, they're also principal analysts involved in Brandon Hall Group's ongoing research in all areas of human capital management. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to be here as well.
Yeah, it should be fun. We're going to share with the audience today our insights from research we've done over the course of 2023 and a preview of our HCM Outlook 2024 report, which will publish early next year. And we're going to give you our strongly held points of view and predictions for HCM in 2024 and in some cases beyond. We also want this to be interactive. The chat will be open for your comments, perhaps including your own predictions or opinions, or maybe you disagree with what we're saying. We want to hear it all. And the idea here is to exchange ideas on where HCM is heading or should be heading. So first, some information about Brandon Hall Group and some announcements and logistics. I'm sure most of you are familiar with us, but for those who aren't, we're a human capital management research and advisory firm that empowers excellence in organizations around the world through our research and tools. We have 6 practice areas listed here, and we'll talk about all of those topics today, plus the future of work. A quick mention that we currently have several certification programs open as well for enrollment, including Certified Learning Strategist, Leadership Development Strategist, Talent Management Strategist, DEI Strategist, etc. All focusing on all our practice areas. You can visit certification.brandonhall.com to learn more about how to earn a designation. Everyone who registered today will get a complimentary copy of the HCM Outlook 2024 book, which will be published in January. As I mentioned, the book covers all areas of HCM, learning, talent management, leadership development, diversity, equity, inclusion, talent acquisition, and future of work. The HCM Outlook report also helps fuel our content for the HCM Excellence Conference, our annual event. It's held this year from February 13th to 15th in the beautiful South Florida area at the Hilton West Palm Beach. We hope many of you will join us. The conference celebrates the accomplishments of winners of 2023 Brandon Hall Group Excellence Awards, plus the insights of selected winners from many of the progressive award-winning companies, including such stalwarts as Accenture, Amazon, Baker Hughes, Equitable Advisors, Estee Lauder, McKinsey, Staples, the Kroger Company, Verizon, US Bank, and many more. We hope to see many of you there, and check out the conference if you would like at excellenceconference.brandonhall.com. Finally, a few logistics. We would love to handle your questions. We'll save some time at the end, and we'll also take some questions as we go. Melissa, our producer, will break in and give us questions or comments that the audience is giving us. The roundtable is being recorded today. We'll share a link to the recording and a PDF of the presentation via email in roughly 24 hours, maybe less. And if you would like to download a copy of today's presentation right now, the link will be available in just a few moments. The chat's also open today. As I mentioned, we really hope you'll share your thoughts and experiences as we go along in the webinar. This is a roundtable, so it's a discussion among us, but also hopefully among you. Your feedback and perspective on what we present and your own experience will really help this be an even better session. So with that, I hope some of you will pop in, just say where you're from, say hello. And with that, let's jump right in. So let's start with the topic everyone's talking about, right? AI, and particularly Gen AI. Big business can't stop talking about AI. NBC News reported earlier this month that AI was mentioned almost as often as earnings in the latest round of S&P 500 earning reports. On the flip side, the Census Bureau reported that only about 4% of US businesses used AI to create products and services last month. But we know that organizations all over the world are talking about it, are trying to figure things out, and there's no question in our mind that Gen AI is going to revolutionize the business, and that includes human capital management. In our HCM Outlook survey, 68% of HR organizations said they believe GenAI will have a positive impact on their companies in 2024. That's quite a change from just September when we did a different study, when only 23% of respondents said GenAI would have a positive impact. 29% said it wouldn't have any impact at all. So many organizations are still trying to get a grip on what GenAI is and what it offers. And so we thought this was a great time, a great topic rather, for a poll question to get you involved quick today. So here's the question: how involved should HCM leaders be in developing the organization's GenAI strategy? Should they play a leadership role, an active role, maybe not leadership, but very active, somewhat active role, or have no substantive role? So that's the question. Again, what kind of role should you play? Leadership, an active role, somewhat active, or no substantive role? I'm curious to see what the answer is. Melissa will let us know when we're ready to go.
It is live, folks, so we're just waiting for your responses, and once we get a pretty good representation, I will go ahead and close that poll and share those results with you all.
Michael, any predictions on where this is going to come out?
Let's hope it's all leadership role.
I hear you there.
Yes.
And also, too, just as a quick reminder, the chat's wide open. We have our team moderating chat, so any questions that come up as we're presenting, feel free to throw them out there, and we'll jump on those questions immediately.
Yeah, I hope we see the majority answering this will say active role or leadership role. If it's no substantive role, that would concern me.
Oh, Mike's giving them more leeway than I did.
Slightly.
Let's take a look.
So your wish has been granted.
There we go.
About 50% said active role, 46% a leadership role. Very few people thought there was anything else involved. So that's great.
Yeah, there's also two other questions there too that they took. Those 3 questions, Claude, that
yeah, Melissa, can we come back to those when we were planning on using them?
We sure can.
Okay, let's do that. All right, I'm going to move on now. And so one of the questions we asked in our HCM Outlook poll was, in fact, how involved are people? Not should they be, but are they? And so right now, even though you all think they should be actively involved or leadership role, 36% are not at all or somewhat involved, and only 32% are actively involved. So I think hopefully things are changing out there and are doing what you think they should be doing, which is really taking a very active role in shaping the strategy. So you already kind of heard a little bit of our opinion. We feel strongly what HCM's role should be, and it is, that you should absolutely be taking the lead. You know, I've heard in my discussions with HR leaders over the course of this year, a lot of concern, some level of hand-wringing over GenAI, possible loss of jobs, privacy and ethics concerns. And those are all legitimate, but nothing can be gained by HR sitting on the sidelines. You know, historically, HR has not embraced technology or data analytics that well, even though they're the staples that have shaped the business functions over the past 20 years. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of start fresh. The fact that a lot of people are talking about it, but they're not taking action yet, gives us some runway to really get on board and really take an active role. You know, we don't expect you to master machine learning algorithms or become experts in Python programming or anything like that, but HR can develop the skill sets needed to work across the organization and ensure GenAI and other AI applications are accurate, reliable, and tied to the business cases and the use cases that the organization wants. So let's take a look now at predictions. What are our predictions for the future related to GenAI? Mike, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think in the not too distant future, we're going to see increased automation relieving managers of some of the most burdensome administrative tasks, empowering them to really empower their teams. I think we have to think of AI in terms of how it can augment human work, not replace human work necessarily. So we're going to need to have great relationships. We're going to have a relationship with the expansive set of the technology tools that every organization use. We're going to have to understand tech stacks. I just did an internal tech stack for Brandon Hall Group, and I was astonished to realize we have 45 to 50 different technology platforms that we use at any one time every single day. So with this expansive set of technology tools, including robots, chatbots that facilitate work and business, I think managers are going to traverse the digital and human worlds to really drive individual, team, and organizational performance.
Great. Michael, what's yours?
Well, I think it's a dovetail to what Mike just talked about is part of getting this to happen, the traversing of the human and digital worlds, is we have to be able to speak to anybody about anything at any time. And so I think technology is going to take on the idea that we can do that. We can finally remove the barriers of dialogue and language. We'll be able to effectively communicate and collaborate on business projects instantaneously with an exact understanding. And then also, we really believe that the tools will be able to analyze and understand the source language, and nothing's lost in translation. We get perfect resonance in what we're trying to accomplish between groups and just kind of tear down the barriers that we're presently seeing.
Great. And again, anybody can weigh in and tell us what your thoughts are. I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit. I'm going to go out and say that the metaverse that everybody started talking about last year will actually materialize, will actually have an impact. You remember the metaverse, right? Way back in 2022, about a year ago, it was the next big thing. And then GenAI, excuse me, became the next big thing. And metaverse discussion and discourse really virtually disappeared. But I don't think it's dead. I think many progressive companies, I know that many progressive companies are still developing it. And it does have a place, I think, in the future of work, because online collaboration is becoming almost as static as answering emails, right? It's just Zoom platform after Zoom call after Zoom call, Teams call, what have you. The metaverse enables people to enter immersive virtual worlds that allow them to interact with others using avatars that reflect our personas as we see ourselves rather than how others perceive us. The metaverse enables virtual communities that are separate from the chaotic ones we actually work in. And I think that can enable kind of almost an escape a little bit and enable better social interaction and collaboration. So maybe I'm wrong. It's maybe a bit of a stretch, but that's what I'm going to go with. All right, let's move on to the next topic, future of work. So this is future of work beyond GenAI. So we asked our research respondents what the most important future work initiatives would be for 2024. And this is what they came up with. 72% said improve the employee work experience, followed by increasing leaders' ability to manage employees more holistically and inclusively, and then reinvest in well-being. And well-being came up quite a bit, and we're going to talk about well-being a little bit more. So that's what the data told us. And the key question that we wanted to cover is, how do we make employees as productive and engaged as possible in the fast-changing work environment? And so there are obviously many answers to this, and so I'm going to just take one angle, and that is that I think organizations need to focus more on the best digital tools they can afford and put them into the hands of all workers, but especially frontline workers, which comprise roughly 80% of the workforce, but get only about 1 to 2% of the technology budget, depending on which study you look at. In this hyper-connected digital world now, there's got to be more focus on arming employees with the tools they need to be as efficient as possible and to be as connected as possible. Only 35% of organizations in our research rank the use of innovative technology and tools as a critical part of employee experience. And that's kind of a red flag for me. Everything is tied to technology now, and employees need to have the right tools. We at Brandon Hall Group really work hard at that. Mike mentioned we had like 45 different things, and you can imagine a Fortune 500 company, how many they're dealing with. So it also means that you have to have a pretty good relationship with IT. And we did a study this year that showed that the HR IT collaboration is maybe not what it could be. And so partnering across the organization, and particularly with IT on digital technology, will really help with the connection in the very chaotic work environment. So let's go to some predictions on this topic now. And Michael, let's start with you this time.
Well, we talk apprenticeships. So it's making its digital comeback. We think that. So with the new roles that are taking place within companies, either they've been invented or existing roles that require new skills. We think it's going to be more important than ever that we properly prepare employees for these new roles. But right now, we kind of go about it by identifying people-based and performance and maybe to some degree potential. But the on-the-job training that they move into a new role is going to be potentially a downfall or send them down a rabbit hole. So what we need are digital apprenticeships. And the work that we do with organizations and the research that we collect shows that that's a combination of structured practice learning, mentorship, and applied skills. And we need to offer this before people move into a role so we can get them prepared. And it's a strategic way to build a more motivated, qualified workforce. So that's what we're seeing in this kind of digital comeback for apprenticeships.
Okay, let us know what you think of that prediction. And Mike, what do you got?
So I think the gig economy is going to provide a lot of talented workers and organizations, companies with a lot of flexibility than ever before. I think it's going to be overall a great thing. I think one downfall potentially is we do see companies managing gig employees a little bit differently than full-time employees. I think that's something we have to just think about. We don't tend to think about learning and development for gig employees the same way as we do full-time employees. So, also I think the availability of all these various, gigs, it's going to provide a lot of individuals opportunities to really pursue passions, meet really important people, develop their networks, develop skills and talents. I also think it's going to provide gig workers with greater flexibility, hopefully. And companies should be able to quickly access talent without all the administration and burden of hiring somebody full-time. I also think it's going to leverage the talents of those involved, but also help create a more efficient and effective model of conducting business in the future.
I agree. And we're going to talk a little bit more about flexibility in a couple of minutes. Before I move on to my prediction, I just want to recognize Tammy, who said she loves the idea of apprenticeships coming back, and she thinks it's going to be important for both parties to see what's in it for me, for them to want to participate in the apprenticeships. I think that's absolutely right. It's like anything in learning, right? Is what's in it for me? It's got to be about the employee. Everything's got to be employee-centric. So like anything else, just offering the apprenticeships isn't enough. It's marketing them in a way that employees are going to, or even people outside the company who may be candidates like college students, they see the use for them and the need for them. So my prediction is that personalized benefits will define employer brand. So what I mean by that is workplaces are going to operate more about employees and their preferences and personalized experiences and benefits for individuals and their collective communities. So in this diverse workforce that we have now, the benefits the companies offer, ranging from health insurance to tuition assistance to mental health and financial wellness, can't be one size fits all. Every workforce has many different personas and demographics represented. And I think the most successful employers are going to be giving employees, or perhaps to Mike's point, even maybe gig workers to some degree, a choice of benefits and perks that are going to meet their needs.
Claude, before we move on, there was a question that came in. Why is on-the-job training not a good solution?
Anybody want to tackle that? Yeah.
Sure. It's potentially not scalable, first of all, or based on the number of people that would need the training and also the hybrid work condition to do that. So organizations that we find in the research and the engagements that we do with them is they're looking for a more scalable version of OJT. And so this digital apprenticeship opens up the whole organization, potentially globally, of all time zones and all languages to make that OJT more scalable. So that's really the digital part of it is what's really making a comeback versus, for lack of a better way of saying, the analog version of just one person lining up with one person in that space and time, directly overseeing what they're doing and not getting the benefit of scalability. The other part is diversity. By having digital apprenticeship, now you can have different people with different points of view or different approaches to work or different cultural practices can now give a more collaborative and potentially more holistic approach to on-the-job training that they wouldn't be able to do if it was just one person teaching one person. So it's kind of a riff on an old idea, bringing it into the overall digital transformation of HR.
And for anybody who's attending the conference, we are having an innovation lab on this topic of digital apprenticeships, and Accenture and the Harvard University Next Level Lab will be talking about this topic. So we're going to provide some more coverage of this topic. So now let's move on to learning and development. And for learning and the rest of our topics, our data will focus on what our research respondents said will be the heaviest areas of investment in both time and money. So when we talk investment, we're talking about time and money. And so I found this L&D data uplifting, and I think these are 4 great areas to invest in. First was linking learning to performance and career development, learning, measurement, and analytics, which used to go pretty low on what people were going to invest in, but it's really moved up over the last couple of years, rightfully so, in our opinion. And then there was a tie between better alignment between learning strategy and business goals and upskilling and reskilling, which obviously has been a really hot topic this year. So there's a couple key questions we want to talk about briefly. What are the best strategies to solve the upskilling, reskilling puzzle? And so we get a lot of inquiries about upskilling, reskilling, and the question we usually get is, well, what skills should I be focusing on? And that really depends on your company and the skills you have and the skills you don't have. And so with a lot of talk about skills and becoming a skills-based organization, what you really need to start with is skills intelligence, meaning collecting data and assessing data to understand the skills that you have and the gaps between what you have and what you and the rest of the organization believe that you need. Only then can you really develop a strategy that makes sense to address skill gaps and develop talent and hire talent to meet the future needs of the business. So that's the starting point. A lot more to it. That's the foundation in our minds. Then the other question is, what must L&D do to have greater impact on the business? A lot of answers to this too, but again, at a high level, I think that we need to transform learning into a core competency. And that may seem really basic, but we're still living in an age where learning is too often seen as something separate from work, rather than a required behavior or part of the job. And so at the end of the day, learning is a skill, right? That's what I think. Organizations must build that skill across the enterprise to navigate the realities of the world we're working in. Not just a culture of learning or an environment that recognizes and rewards and celebrates learning, but learning must become a core competency of the business. Every project, every deliverable, every meeting becomes an opportunity to learn. Learning programs then support the growth of that competency while addressing key business needs. So that's our 2 cents on that. We'll take a look at the chat. Meanwhile, let's move on to predictions for this. Michael?
Claude, before we jump in, there's just one more thing I want to add to that.
Sure.
Is also for people out there that it needs to be a core competency, but at the same time, we have to realize that learning is probably our best retention tool now. If you look at all of the research that we do and others, is that if people aren't feeling that that personal and professional growth is an opportunity, they'll move on quicker to another organization than potentially anything else that would make them move on. So we got to really start taking it as a core competency, realizing it's a key to employee retention.
Well said. And what's your prediction here?
It's a combo platter. I get to do my prediction too. So we kind of took a look at everything, scrubbing the universe. This is where we came up with learning developers will become skilled AI engineers. There's been a lot of chat and serious conversation as well around what is the role of AI from an instructional design standpoint, and where does AI meet HI, the human intelligence, in order to get the best outcome. So we're not advocating that AI is going to be replacing instructional designers, replacing people that actually are experts in the field, but it's a very powerful tool to streamline and accelerate the creation of content. And in the hands of skilled AI engineers and learning people that really have learned how to use these LLMs, that learning is going to be able to be transformative now. We'll be able to add a level of agility, flexibility, adaptivity, and scalability that we've never had before. We'll be able to finally hit that mark that we've always wanted to hit of personalized learning at scale. The thing that it will bring on is that AI is going to need to have adhered to it some level of governance, good sound instructional
Yes.
design principles. We'll have to manage projects properly and use AI tools well and decide those standards and practices. But it's very exciting.
Yeah, I really think the learning agility is going to become the master skill for all, because the accelerated evolution of work in the workplace that marked the first few years of the 2020s, it's only going to intensify, I believe. And as such, for everybody involved, the ability to learn in first-time situations, to learn quickly, to adapt to future conditions, will be the skill that separates success from failure. There's a certain amount of really innate ability required where learning agility is concerned, but organizations have to also consider how they can best foster the development of the skill set, and creating a culture where learning is valued, which we all know is super important, rewarded and expected, is really going to help this effort.
So I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. I agree with both of those, but I'm going to say that learning will evolve into a revenue generating machine. And by that, I mean the more companies will offer learning, not only to current customers, but to prospective customers and the public. And creating this impactful learning experience can also drive brand product awareness. And so this potential to make money from learning become this revenue generating machine that I mentioned is significant, because a lot has got to change in L&D. There's got to be more technology. There needs to be more of everything to do a better job and be real strategic. But a lot of that costs money. So extended enterprise learning that can help pay the bills and establishes L&D as a contributor to the growth of the organization is important. And we've seen a huge increase in 2023 in organizations that are considering extended enterprise learning for the first time. So I think that that's going to be developing in the future. And let's see here. We have several comments I want to touch on real quickly. Melody says, when L&D actually figures out how to show they move the needle on profit due to better skill sets across the organization, that'll be a good time. Let's see, there's another one here. More business leaders and technology leaders will move into the learning and HR space as a result, I think, of trying to build learning as a core competency. All right, let's keep rolling. We still have a lot to cover, so I'm going to move through some of this a little quickly so we can focus on the prediction. So this is the heaviest investment in talent management for 2024, again, in time and money. And really head and shoulders above everything else is career development and succession planning. And then you can look at the other two while I talk about this for a second. Career development and succession planning before the pandemic was toward the bottom of the priority list. It's been moving up steadily and catapulting to the top this year because people understand that they've got to develop better talent from within, and to keep employees, they've got to develop their careers. They've got to connect the learning with career development and succession planning. So this is good to see, and the devil's in the details and the execution, but it's great to see that focus. The key question is, what are the most important strategies to improve talent retention? I'm going to keep this one really simple because there's no easy answer here. There's a comprehensive answer is impossible in the time we have. But the bottom line to me and to us is retention is an outcome of the employee experience. So the secret to talent retention comes from understanding what employees want and need and meeting those needs to the extent possible while keeping the organization's business goals in mind. Most organizations are still struggling with that. And so this is, I think, a big focus, and obviously there's a lot more to it, but it has to start with that. So let's move to the predictions now. Mike, what do you say?
Yeah, so I think we have to figure out if the hybrid work revolution is really trust or bust, but a fundamental and formidable shift in attitude about both remote and hybrid work, it's going to continue to manifest itself. Technology continues to advance. It really allows remote work to be effective for many types of jobs. There is tension triggered by management distrust of employee productivity. It may reach a breaking point, but if retention and engagement truly are the most critical targets, organizations need to find ways of viewing productivity and remote work as a whole. The problem I have with organizations that allow remote work, many of them are tracking their employees' keystrokes, believe it or not. Their time in front of a camera, how often they're typing. I think that's got to go away. I think there needs to be a little bit more trust between certainly management, leadership, and employees, so that you can work more towards a common goal. Nobody wants to be watched over in that way. And we're a remote and hybrid work organization. We don't do that. I think it's just wrong. And if your employer is doing it, it's probably a big issue.
Well said. Michael?
And I think building on that trust or bust, we have to get better at listening. But again, I mean, it's a recurring theme, and apologize for that, but how do you listen at scale? Right now, our listening device is an employee survey to see how everybody is doing, but we need to go farther than that, to be able to shape the employee experience into what our workforce wants, what our leaders think is important. We need to bring in AI again. AI can be that brand new digital version of the ultimate scalable listening tool. We'll be able to get a clearer picture. We'll be able to see what is the more direct correlation between the data that we can collect and the insights it shows, to make sure we are paying attention to what really drives what we call the intrinsic and extrinsic factors to employee motivation, and how do we need to react to things much more quickly. I mean, think about it in today's terms. You launch a survey, you have to develop the questions, you get it back, you have to sort through all the data. Imagine if you had an AI listening tool where you could find out real-time information act on that, either at an individual level, team, group, functional area, or organization as a whole. So this is just another element of HR moving towards using data in order to make something much more powerful than just sending out a survey and then reading the results and deciding what to do.
Agreed. I'm going to go in a slightly different direction, and this is already happening to some degree, so maybe it's not the world's greatest prediction, but I think there's going to be new markers of growth and development that are going to emerge. And what I mean by that is, we talked about how important career development is, and in the future, career growth is going to depend more on experience and demonstrated capabilities rather than degrees from 4 years institutions where people have to go in heavy debt to get an education, rather than depending completely on institutions of higher education. And for degree completion, I think there's going to be more focus on certifications from various parties, professional associations, institutes, etc. And also, as well as assessments and capabilities of behavioral traits and skills. With the laser focused learning, streamlined objectives, and a clear practical focus, employees can experience relevant and significant development at a fraction of the cost. So this may not be the case for all jobs, maybe really high level jobs, but I think for certainly frontline work and even mid-level jobs, I think it's going to be more about experience and certifications rather than formal education. Especially
before we move off,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Before we move off of this, I think Tammy had an interesting point about AI revitalizing surveys. Great example of that, Tammy, to bring it home, is we have a enterprise excellence certification, and we actually use AI-driven assessment tools in order to help organization understand that, to be able to kind of reimagine how questions are asked and be able to give them a more scalable version of understanding what they need to work on, for example, employee engagement. So couldn't agree with you more. We've incorporated it, and many organizations need to do the same thing.
Okay, let's move on. Oops, hit the wrong button here. We're going to focus on leadership development in a minute, but first of all, I want to do another poll question and get your opinion on something. So which of the following would you say deserves the greatest investment in both time and money to improve leadership development? Is it high potential identification and succession planning, increasing immersive learning, leadership training at all levels, improve the diversity of the leadership pipeline, or I gave you an option of if you think they're all equally important, choose all of the above. I think some people probably responded to this already, so we'll see what we come up with.
We just need all 50, 100, 200 people or so that are on just to hit all of the above button.
I agree. That's why I put it there. It's kind of like a trick question.
Hint
Hint.
to the
Yeah.
hint to the audience.
Okay, Melissa, do we have a quorum yet?
Yep, I think we're right about there. I'll go ahead and close the poll.
All right, let's see what it says. Yes. I don't know if you voted this way before or after Michael made his plea, but 54% of you say all of the above. And obviously, we kind of think that's the right answer. And we're glad you do too.
Great.
Okay, let's move on now and talk a little bit more about leadership development. These are the three areas that our respondents said would take their heaviest investment in both time and money for 2024. Succession planning, which I think ties back to that career development thing, is number one. Believe me, it used to be at the very bottom 3 or 4 years ago. So there's been a huge change and shift in how people are thinking. And then increasing the opportunities for leaders to practice and apply new skills. And then the other thing I was really glad to see was improving the diversity of the leadership pipeline coming up to number 3. That also has been relatively low in recent years. So it was good to see. So in terms of the key question, how can organizations provide continuous leadership development focused on agility, resilience, and managing ambiguity? And there's a few things here I'll just touch on, but I want to get to our predictions quickly. One, I think, is organizations have to work with leaders to get them to understand that learning and training to be a leader is part of their job. I can't tell you how many clients tell us our employers are too busy for leadership training. They're too busy for all this learning we ask them to do. That's poppycock. I mean, learning is part of your job. Leadership is an eternal journey. We're all still working at it. We always will be working at it. It is very difficult, and it changes depending on the environment, the people you're working with. So you've got to commit to that. And the leaders need to understand, and organizations need to give them the time to learn. And then I think the other thing is immersive learning. Is they've got to be able to practice the skills in a safe environment. So all the things that were in the poll are all necessary, but I think if one thing stands out for me, it's leaders need to understand that learning is part of their job and they need to make it part of their job. So our predictions, Michael.
Well, again, I think this is just another version of moving from the analog to digital world, which is we all agree on this presentation that people that are in leadership roles learn best being able to practice their style, practice their skills, working through real world decisions so that they don't practice on their people. And this has become a big challenge and continues to be a big challenge. And how do you do that at scale? And also all the other things we talked about being potentially in the global environment. We believe that virtual reality and augmented reality, or what the new XR is what they call it, is the idea that we got to get people to be able to practice. And using simulations and using augmented reality scenarios, this is going to be able to give us very precise, very accurate reproduction of a real world scenario that a leader can play out and then learn from that and practice until they get it and that they feel comfortable that they can bring it into the workplace. It needs to grow significantly, but that's what predictions are all about. But the organizations that we've seen through our awards program and through organizations we work with worldwide that are putting this in place are seeing tremendous results.
Great points, Mike.
Yeah, I kind of hate the term. Actually, I despise it, but I do believe reverse mentoring is going to gain a lot of traction. But the reason I hate reverse mentoring is it just implies that you have somebody that's younger, that's not as knowledgeable, teaching leaders how to, new or different skills. When again, I just really think it's teamwork. I think the first example of this I saw was probably with Jack Welch when he was alive in General Electric. And a lot of the senior people at GE didn't know how to use email, right? They'd have their secretaries or their assistants print out pages of emails. And he put something in place where he's like, you know what, go to our younger new employees who know how to actually use email and, teach the leaders, how they respond and how they go through things. Sounds really simple today, right? Because everybody uses email, but back in the day, that's what was really happening. I think if we have this type of teamwork, I do think it will help bridge generational gaps, and I think it creates a much stronger culture overall. But again, the term reverse mentoring, I would probably prefer to call it something else.
I'm with you, and it really builds engagement and culture, like you said. So I think it's whatever we call it. I think it's important.
Yes.
Mine is that every leader eventually will get a coach. If there's one way to get leaders to understand that learning is part of their job, it's to have them have a coach, probably an external coach, to continue their learning on a regular basis. So coaching provides, in my opinion, and I'm biased because I'm a certified leadership coach, but I think it provides a rare, unbiased, and honest point of view that helps leaders see their blind spots, warn them of possible derailing behavior, etc. And simply put, leaders are going to gain insights from working with a professional coach that they aren't going to be able to get from traditional learning. Leadership is personal. People have different strengths, different growth areas that they need to address, and a coach really helps them get there. And this is another one of the sessions we're having at the conference where people who are really excelling, companies rather, that are really excelling at coaching, are going to share their experience and how they're building it. All right. Tammy says coaching also helps integrate learning in other forms. Right. Coaching can be a part of an overall learning program and is really even better as part of a learning program, not necessarily standalone. So agree with that. Let's move on to talent acquisition, and I'll move through these fairly quickly. So with talent acquisition, the number one thing is alignment of talent acquisition strategy and the business strategy. And not surprisingly, onboarding. Onboarding has been a priority both in learning and in talent acquisition for the last few years. Diverse hiring is right up there along with employer brand. Those are the three levels of investment, in all same percentage of companies pretty much said all these things. So the key question is, how does our talent acquisition strategy allow our hiring speed, pipeline, and candidate experience to remain competitive? So in most organizations, talent acquisition strategy is not working nearly as well as it could be. And to me, there's a couple of reasons. Onboarding, I think, is obvious. The thing that I was really surprised in not seeing in the data was a focus on employee experience. I think candidate experience should be way higher on the priority list to me than it is. Ensuring the candidate's experience is easy, informative, encouraging, even if they don't get a job or don't even make it to the finals is important, because treating every candidate like a potential employee opens creates a sense of desire of belonging for the candidate. It really helps you build your employer brand. I have a friend who went through a job process, was told he was a final candidate, and all of a sudden, nothing, disappeared, emailed him, nothing. 5 months later, they came through with a job offer. Guess what? Not only did he not take the job, but he had badmouthed the employer to anybody he knew, because he was so angry at the way he was just cut off. So I think candidate experience is a big deal. So going forward for our predictions, what do we think, Mike?
Yeah, well, I think onboarding is going to really mature and expand. So I think a common language around onboarding in an organization is really critical. So they're all speaking the same language. And I really do consider this a critical process. Defining the roles and responsibilities for each stage is really a key first step. You almost need a playbook for this, right? So I think teams should really define each stage and the primary goal or goals, as well as who's responsible for content, process, and follow-up within each stage, right? And regular checkpoints, tracking, and feedback loops are really important, crucial to ensuring improvement, continuous improvement. So mess steps in onboarding usually lead to early turnover, right? So you lose employees, it costs more money. So your onboarding team must extend through at least year one of employment. Over reliance on technology and employee self-service processes is also a mistake, I think, at this stage. So I think high touch that consistently lessens over time will lead to better success. But I think that's why we call it onboarding. If you have a successful onboarding process, you have a much better chance of success.
Agreed. Well put, Michael.
Well, I guess I get to touch the third rail of predictions in this one, which is, we've hit the gas and we've gone full speed ahead on trying to get people to come back to work. Some organizations, we've seen high profile organizations in the news be absolutely insistent on everybody coming back. Our feeling is that this is going to become an inflection point and potentially a showdown between employers and employees as to the need for coming back to work. Either A, you've never been there in the first place, now everyone needs to come in, or that you've designed and now are very comfortable in a hybrid environment and need to give that up and come in full time. There is no right or wrong answer, but if we make it a showdown between our employees and ourselves as employers, then it could potentially blow up. So we need to be very thoughtful about how we go through this and carefully consider what's happened over 2 or 3 years. Are we seeing greater economies of scale, better productivity, better work-life balance, overall better wellness with our employees based on how things have played out? But most importantly, the best way to get it right about return to office versus remote work is to actually spend more time in those listening sessions with your employees. They ultimately can help you with the solution.
Yeah, time doesn't allow me to tell you some of the really horror stories that I hear from employers who are forcing people back to work. But let's just say that the talent retention rates when people force people back to the office against their will really jump and creates a lot of engagement issues and a lot of problems. So real quick, my prediction would be that recruiters will become talent brokers. This is a little offbeat, but I think we're operating in what I call a capability desert right now out in the workforce, and there simply isn't the supply of talent to meet needs. So the relationships that recruiters develop when they do hire employees and they become part of the organization will become more important in retaining them. So in other words, the recruiters need to keep up those relationships and act as internal recruiters or talent brokers to keep in touch with those people, understand what they want, and see if they can find openings within the organization and fill those positions internally based on the relationships they've developed in terms of bringing them into the organization in the first place. Those are my thoughts. Great. We're going to try to save a couple minutes at the end for more comments, but keep them coming. We have people weighing in on coaching, saying it is maybe the most effective type of learning. Candidate experience being incredibly critical to address. So keep them coming and we'll try to hit a few more as we go. The next area is core HR and the heaviest areas of investment there. 75% said wellness and well-being, 71% workforce planning, and then distant third was time and attendance and automated scheduling. So the key question here is, what are the key steps to take to adapt to new workforce or workplace dynamics? And to me, wellness is going to be huge. Every survey we do, every interview, it seems somebody's talking about wellness and the need to focus more on wellness because of all the stress that employees feel. And wellness, I think, is going to become the must-have part of the employee value proposition. There's a growing focus on topics such as mental health and financial well-being and all areas of health. And the expectation that employers will take an active role in supporting employees, that's occurring now, and I think it's only going to increase. I think the other thing is organizations need to get better at leveraging data and analytics to really understand the workforce, what's happening. Predictive analytics can show impact on the broader business as skill requirements shift and what happens as a results of closing gaps through learning. So those two things are two things that I think are really going to be critical. But what do we think is going to happen in the future, Michael?
Well, this is an interesting point of view that we've created, and we've already seen it taken off. So it's kind of a happening now / prediction. But because of this whole digital transformation and a heavy emphasis on technology within the HR organization, it's no surprise that many heads of HR are going to need to be at a much higher level of technical competency and skills with IT, and so will the teams. And so we see that there may be a potential for a partnership, say, between a CIO and a CHRO, where they can work together in order to build those critical skills. We have to make it a core competency, and it's going to start at the top. Anyone who saw the movie American Factory can see that it's even going to trickle down into a leadership role where you could be potentially managing robots and people working side by side. Have we ever trained a leader, or is HR prepared to teach people how to be able to manage machines as part of a leadership piece? So IT and HR are converging. It's our opportunity to make that be 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah, we just did a study on HR and IT and the collaboration. If anybody's interested, you can reach out to us and we'd be happy to share some of that. Mike, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No worries. I think really what's happening is that we're seeing HR becoming more data-driven and employee-centric. Not every organization is yet. I believe the HR space is long allowed for the growth of generalists and certain business partners and managers who are either great with people or really good with numbers. But moving forward, you're going to have to be strong on both sides. So for most companies, it really means a push to build data capabilities of practitioners. And I think in all companies, the ability to really understand the data and the analytical outcomes through the lens of the employee experience, employee engagement is going to need to become second nature. And for those HR teams that aren't elevating their ability to do this, I believe they're going to find themselves irrelevant or worse, out of work.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Mine is related to the well-being, and I'll keep it short, but I think well-being is going to become the great differentiator in the employer branding. I really do. It began as a smart way to navigate the turmoil of the global pandemic, but people are going through so much, both in their jobs, and they need help. They need help balancing things, learning how to deal with stress better, maybe their finances as well, working with their colleagues, adjusting to maybe the lack of engagement because of distance, all those kind of things. So I think how organizations help employees with well-being is going to be a huge part of their employer brand. So our final category today is, sorry, my finger went a little spastic there. Our final category is DEI. So we want to ask you a quick poll question before we get into that. Can you indicate for us how the importance of DEI has changed as part of your organization's business strategy over the past year? This should be a simple one. Is it more important, no change, or less important? The reason we ask that question is we do a lot with DEI. We had a conference in the summer, and there's a lot of people talking about kind of the pushback or headwinds, so to speak, on DEI initiatives. So we wanted to get a sense of what you were seeing in terms of the attention and the importance that is being associated with DEI now. And so this is great. 67% say more important, 29% no change, and just a few with less importance. So that's good to see. We certainly agree with that. I think it is very important, but maybe the focus needs to change a little bit, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. This is the heaviest investment in DE&I in terms of time and money. Number one is embedding the values of DEI across the organization, and that's been at the top of the heap for the last couple of years. Improving or developing a DEI strategic plan. Our research shows most organizations have one now, or a majority, but they aren't always what they would like them to be, and so it needs continued work. And then 51% said creating mentorship programs for diverse employees and high potentials would get a high level of investment. So the key question here is, how do we integrate DEI into our core values and overall business strategy? And I think the key, and I get pretty emotional about this topic, but I think the key is framing DEI as leveraging the power of perspective. DEI has too often been interpreted as like this conflict, right, between advocates who want to correct historical and systemic inequities against people who believe that focusing on DEI promotes quote unquote reverse discrimination or something like that and threatens meritocracy. In reality, I think in a business context, DEI really needs to be about drawing on diverse perspectives, ideas, and experiences to try to optimize all that the workforce has to offer: creativity, agility, problem-solving ability, to meet all the needs of all stakeholders. The more diverse perspectives you can get, the better decisions you make. I think it's as simple as that. So rather than what some companies have told me they're doing and kind of turning away or turning down the rhetoric on DEI because of maybe some social political backlash, real or imagined, organizations should reframe or just emphasize that it's really about maximizing inclusion of talent, ideas, and experiences to meet the challenges of an increasingly complex world. To me, that's the key. There's also other things like increased leader accountability that I think we need to work on, and creating a network of allies, champions to really advocate for DEI across the organization. But I think framing it in terms of just diverse perspectives to make the best decisions is the way to go. And then our final set of predictions, Mike, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Claude. Yeah, I really believe that AI is going to enable DEI improvements. What's already happening now is we see technology providers across the entire human capital management space. They're integrating solutions that can help reduce bias, diversify talent pools, improve access to technology for folks with disabilities, support greater flexibility and inclusivity for people with those disabilities, also working parents and underprivileged and underrepresented groups and much more. But at the same time, we see AI engineers are focusing on ensuring these systems don't perpetuate or introduce biases based on race, gender, other factors. So some of these tools, AI tools, such as text evaluation to minimize bias in job postings, they've been around for years, but they're really, really ubiquitous now to HCM technology offerings rather than just add-ons or standalone solutions. And I think that's a good thing going forward.
Great, thanks. Michael, I'm going to give you the last word since we're running out of time for your prediction.
Well, it's a bit of a riff of what I was talking about earlier about this forcing people back to work in the showdown. Is that also is going to be a critical DEI issue? That how are we going to address that people's work-life balance and how they organize their work schedule? How are we going to make that an inclusive part of our culture? How are we going to represent the diversity of people's needs? And so even just the basic work condition of where I'm working and why I'm working the way I am and how I balance that is going to be a critical DEI issue.
Thanks for that. I was going to skip mine, but we've got 1 minute, so I'll just say that the use of allied networks will accelerate. I just think that I'm hearing, we do a lot of interviews with DEI on DEI, and we're hearing organizations really understand that to embed DEI across the organization, really, it can't be done just by leaders. It needs to be champions across the workforce that are working together and advocating, not necessarily on a soapbox, but just talking to people, being part of different groups in the organization, and really embedding the values over time throughout the organization. So I think that's going to be really important. Well, we've run out of time, and we really want to thank you. We had great comments, great participation in the roundtable. And thank you for attending. We know it's a busy time. You're trying to finish up a lot of things probably before you go on holiday. And so we appreciate everything that you brought to the table today. Thank you, Mike and Michael, for your collaboration on this. It's been a lot of fun today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody that joined too.
And we wish everybody a happy holiday and hope to see you on a webinar or roundtable produced by Brandon Hall Group in the near future. Goodbye,
And
everybody.
most importantly,
Thanks a
we
lot.
hope to see you at our conference.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, we do. We hope we see you. Again, February 13th to 15th. You can come to a DEI immersive event on February 12th. Come to Florida in the middle of winter. You won't regret it. And with
There
that,
you go.
goodbye.
Bye-bye.